Toddler heard, barking, under the sidewalk. What he found will destroy. The plastic wheel of Liam's toy truck bumped against the sidewalk and stopped near a thick crack. Liam toddled over and picked it up, but before he could turn away, he heard something strange. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't the birds, it was a sound, muffled, sharp, like crying, but not human. He knelt down, tiny palms pressing against the rough pavement. There it was again, a bark, not loud, not angry. It was weak, broken. Liam's lips parted and he whispered, "Doggy?" He looked around. Nothing but the quiet street and his mom in the yard, hanging clothes on the line. The dog barked again, fainter this time, as if it was losing strength. Liam pressed his ear to the sidewalk. His heart beat fast, not because he was scared, but because he knew something was there. He stood up fast, ran to his mom, and tugged her shirt. "Mommy!" he said, eyes wide. "There's a doggy in the ground." Sarah smiled and kept folding towels. "In the ground?" Liam pointed. "It barked. It's stuck. We gotta help." She laughed a little, brushing his hair back. "Honey, maybe you imagined it. There's no dog under the sidewalk." Liam's face dropped. He didn't throw a tantrum. He just walked back slowly and sat on the edge of the sidewalk again. Toy truck in his lap, hands resting on his knees. He waited. Minutes passed, then it came again, a scratch, a shuffle, another bark, but this one had pain in it. Liam's eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "I hear you, doggy. I won't go." That night, Liam didn't sleep well. He kept asking about the dog. His father laughed it off, saying, "Dogs bark all over the neighborhood," but Liam was sure. "It's in the sidewalk, Daddy." Next morning, Liam skipped breakfast. He walked straight to the same spot, sat down, and pressed his face close. No sound. He waited. Nothing, until he tapped the sidewalk with his truck. Suddenly, a bark shot up through the concrete like a cry for help. Liam jumped back. "I knew it!" he yelled. He ran inside, screaming, "He's still there!" Sarah followed, him out. Okay, let's check again." She crouched near the sidewalk and knocked lightly on it. Nothing. She looked at Liam, sighing. "Sweetheart, it's just scratch, scratch, bark." Sarah's mouth dropped open. She put her hand over the crack. "Oh my God!" She ran to the garage, grabbed a broom handle, and poked gently near the sound. The barking grew louder. "Someone's buried under here," she said. Liam stood still, eyes locked on the sidewalk. "He's stuck, Mommy. We have to get him out." They called animal control. A man showed up an hour later, took a look, and shook his head. "It's probably an echo from the sewers," he said. "We get these calls sometimes." "But it barked," Sarah insisted. "My son heard it yesterday, and it's still there." "Look," the man said, "if you want to file a report, you can. But tearing up city pavement over a noise, not going to happen." He left. Liam sat back down, angry. "They don't believe him," he whispered to the ground. Sarah stared at the crack. Her gut twisted. She had no proof. But the sound, that sound wasn't a trick. It was real. So that night, while Liam slept, Sarah grabbed a flashlight and a small hammer. She returned to the spot. With every tap, she whispered, "Please be okay, please." Tap, tap, bark. She started chipping. Small flakes of concrete broke away. It was slow, hard work, but she didn't stop. By morning, her hands were bruised. The crack was wider now, and Liam was there beside her again, holding his toy. "Is he coming out yet?" She smiled through tears. "Soon, baby. We're getting closer." Liam leaned forward and whispered through the crack, "Don't be scared, doggy. We're here." From deep inside, a soft, weak bark came back. It was more than a noise. It was a promise, a fragile thread of hope between a child and a creature no one else believed in. Sarah looked at her son. "We're not stopping, Liam. "We're going to save him." And they kept going. Not because anyone told them to, but because a little boy heard a dog that no one else could, and refused to let it be forgotten. Liam didn't care about breakfast. He grabbed his toy truck, still dusty from yesterday, and ran out the front door barefoot. His feet slapped against the driveway as he made his way to the same crack in the sidewalk. He dropped to his knees and set the truck beside him like a soldier taking post. "Doggy?" he whispered. Silence. Then the wind moved through the trees, and for a second he thought it was gone. Maybe he had imagined it. But just as doubt started to creep in, he noticed something, right at the edge of the crack. Tiny marks, almost like scratches. He leaned closer, pushing his face down. His little fingers brushed the edge of the sidewalk. There, just beneath the jagged split in the cement, the faintest scent reached his nose. It wasn't the smell of dirt or grass. It was sour, wet, wrong. He sat back up, his heart pounding harder than it had yesterday. "You're still there," he whispered. Then came the sound again. But it wasn't just a bark this time. It was a whimper, short, weak, like someone was crying with their throat closed. Liam stood up fast and screamed toward the house. "Mommy!" Sarah came running, holding a laundry basket against her hip. "What is it, baby?" "There's a dog down there. I told you." Sarah walked over, put the basket down, and knelt beside him. "I saw scratches." Liam pointed, hands shaking. "Right there. And it smells like sad stuff." Sarah frowned and leaned closer. She ran her hand along the cracked cement. Her fingers paused on the scratches. Her voice dropped. "Oh no." Then the bark came again. So faint it was almost part of the wind. But it was real. Sarah's breath hitched. "You weren't imagining it. There is something down there." "I told you!" Liam cried. She looked around. The street was empty. The city hadn't sent anyone. No one else was listening. She called out, "Hey, Mrs. Grant, you hear that?" The neighbour across the road, watering her roses, shook her head. "Hear what?" "The barking." Mrs. Grant turned off the hose and walked over. "I didn't hear anything." Sarah knocked on the sidewalk. "Just wait." They waited. Nothing. "Maybe it stopped," Sarah said. "But I heard it. I swear." Liam stared at the crack, whispering again, "Please bark." Just once more. As if it understood, the bark came again, this time more like a gasp than a bark. Mrs. Grant's eyes widened. "Oh my Lord." Sarah stood. "This isn't normal. I'm calling animal control again." 10 minutes later, Sarah was pacing the front yard, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, I called yesterday. No, it's not a prank. There's a dog under the sidewalk." Liam sat cross-legged, gently tapping the sidewalk with his toy truck. "It's okay now," he whispered. "She believes you. She's going to help." Rust, flakes and little bits of gravel crumbled as he tapped. Finally, Sarah snapped her phone shut. "They said they'll send someone this afternoon." "Will the doggy be okay?" Liam asked. "I hope so, baby." But her face didn't look hopeful. It looked scared. By noon, no one had come. Sarah called again. Voicemail. She looked at Liam, who hadn't left the spot for hours. That's when Sarah walked into the garage, grabbed a flashlight, and returned with a crowbar. Liam blinked. "What's that for?" She knelt beside him. "To make a space so he can breathe." She jammed the crowbar into the crack. It barely budged. The sidewalk was thick, reinforced, but as she pressed harder, a soft sound came from below, not a bark this time. A low, painful moan. Sarah dropped the crowbar. "He's in pain," Liam whispered. "He's scared." Sarah got back up and yelled toward the open street. "Hello? Is anyone out there? There's a dog trapped under the ground. He's alive." Nothing. Not a single reply. Just the wind. She looked down at Liam. We're going to have to do it ourselves. But how? Liam asked. We'll figure it out, she said. Later that evening, Sarah called her brother Mark, a construction worker. I'm not saying dig up the whole street, she said, pacing. Just come look. Please. He arrived 30 minutes later, crouched down, and knocked with his knuckles. After a pause, the bark came again. Mark leaned back slowly. No way. Liam jumped up. See? I told you. Mark scratched his head. That's not echo. That's something alive. Sarah looked at him with pleading eyes. Can we get through? I mean, not easily. That's city property. I could get in trouble. Sarah didn't blink. He's been down there for days, Mark. Mark sighed. I'll see what I can do, but we got to be careful. That night, Liam didn't sleep in his bed. He fell asleep on the living room floor, clutching his toy truck like a teddy bear. Rusty whimpers still echoed in his ears. Sarah covered him with a blanket, then stood at the window, looking out at the sidewalk. She whispered to the dark, Hold on, sweetheart, we're coming. And under the cement, beneath the silence, the dog waited, weak, alone, but no longer unheard. By morning, word had spread. Curious neighbours wandered over to the sidewalk where Sarah and Liam had spent the past 2 days crouched, listening. A few leaned in, some knocked, but most just shrugged. It's probably a sewer echo, one man said. I bet it's some prank, muttered another. Dogs don't get under sidewalks, someone chuckled. Liam stood behind them, gripping his toy truck. His lips were tight, his eyes full. He didn't speak. He just looked at them like they were blind to something right in front of them. Sarah held his hand and stared them down. There's a life under there, she said, and it's running out of time. The crowd slowly drifted away, shaking their heads. Sarah glanced at her phone. Still no call back from animal control. She had reported it twice, left voicemails, even sent a recording of the bark she captured on her phone last night. Still, silence. She took a deep breath and looked at Liam. Do you believe me, Mommy? He asked quietly. Sarah knelt down to his level. I do, baby. I believe you. He nodded. Then we have to dig. That's when she made her choice. She walked into the garage, pulled out a rusty hammer, a trowel, and an old screwdriver. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Stay back, she warned, kneeling beside the cracked spot. I don't want anything falling in on him. Liam sat a few feet away, legs crossed, watching closely. Be gentle, he whispered. Sarah started chipping at the edge of the concrete. Not wildly, just enough to flake off a piece at a time. The cement was thicker than she thought, almost like it had been freshly poured not long ago. That didn't make sense. This sidewalk was old, tap, chip, scrape. Tiny bits fell away, revealing more of the dark line underneath. The smell grew stronger, wet and sour. Sarah paused, wiping sweat from her forehead. Still with us? She whispered. A faint bark came, back, barely audible, but real. Liam leaned forward. He's still alive. Yeah, she said, gripping the trowel tighter. But for how long? Hours passed. Neighbours walked by. One shook his head. You're going to get fined for damaging city property. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't care. Another one said, That's dangerous, you know. You don't know what's under there. Sarah kept digging. Liam crawled closer. Can I help? She looked at his little hands. You can hold the flashlight. Point it right here. He nodded and held the beam steady. Tap, tap, bark. Another piece cracked loose. Sarah gasped. Beneath it, a small gap appeared. Just enough to see inside. She reached in with the flashlight and shone it through the gap. At first, just dirt. Then, movement. Something brown shifted in the shadows. Sarah froze. Oh my God. What is it? Liam asked, eyes wide. There's a paw. I saw a paw. Liam's face lit up. You saw him? Yeah, baby, she whispered, trembling. We're really close. Liam scooted closer and laid down, pressing his ear to the crack. Don't give up, doggy, he whispered. We're almost there, inside the hole. The faintest whine came through. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even strong. But it was enough to say, I hear you. Sarah kept going. She broke through another thin layer, revealing more space underneath. She could smell it clearly. Now, mildew, rot, and the unmistakable odor of something alive, barely hanging on. The flashlight flickered, a nose, wet, shaking, barely moving. Sarah dropped the trowel and covered her mouth. He's alive. Liam crawled forward and whispered again. We're here. We found you. But the dog didn't bark this time. He just blinked slowly. Sarah stood up fast and grabbed her phone. I'm calling the news. If animal. Control won't come. Maybe someone else will. She dialed. Explained everything. Sent the video and the audio clip. They said they'd send someone. But not now. Not today. She looked back down at the sidewalk and saw Liam laying beside the hole, face just inches from the crack, talking to someone who couldn't answer. Hold on, doggy, he whispered. We're coming. And that was all the dog needed to hear. The trowel slipped from Sarah's hand as the last chunk of concrete cracked and fell into the hollow space beneath. Dust rose into the air, mixing with the sharp, wet smell of something that had been trapped too long. She leaned closer, flashlight in hand, heart thudding in her chest. And then it happened. A trembling paw pushed out through the hole, small, mud-caked, bloody, barely moving. Sarah's breath caught. Oh my God! Liam, look! Liam was already on his knees beside her, eyes huge, hands over his mouth. We found him! He cried. We found him! The paw twitched, then dropped limp on the broken edge of the sidewalk. For a second, no one spoke. Then Liam reached forward with shaking fingers and gently touched the paw. He's real, he whispered. He's really there. Sarah pulled him back carefully. He's hurt, sweetheart. We need to get him out. Now. Sarah shouted toward the street. Mark, we broke through. Call someone. We need help right now. Mark, who had been watching from across the road, dropped his coffee and sprinted over. He saw the paw, the hole, the blood, and didn't ask a single question. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. Sarah knelt again, speaking softly into the crack. Stay with us, buddy. We're going to get you out. More of the sidewalk crumbled, as Mark pried the edge with a crowbar, widening the opening. The ground beneath was hollowed out, like a tunnel that had been there for years, but recently collapsed. Sarah peered into the darkness and saw him for the first time. A tiny German, shepherd pup, thin to the bone. His ribs showed through patchy, dirt-matted fur. His eyes barely opened, one of them swollen shut. His body didn't move, except for the faintest rise and fall of his chest. Come on, baby, Sarah whispered. Breathe. Just keep breathing. Sirens approached. Blue lights flashed. Soon there were officers on the scene, a fire truck pulling up, and neighbors crowding around the tape. A cop stepped up, looking puzzled. Ma'am, what's going on here? There's a puppy, Sarah said, pointing. He was buried under the sidewalk, trapped in some kind of tunnel. We just found him. The officer leaned down and looked into the hole. His jaw clenched. Jesus! Liam tugged on his pants. His name's Rusty, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Rusty, the officer asked. Yeah, Liam nodded. Because he was under the Russ sidewalk, and because he's strong. Sarah glanced at her son and smiled weakly through tears. Rusty, that's perfect. Firefighters approached with gear, carefully, breaking away the remaining slab until the hole was wide enough for one of them to crawl in. A medic reached inside gently. wrapping a towel around Rusty's frail body. "He's barely alive," one of them said. "We need to move fast." They pulled Rusty out like he was made of glass, every limb shaking, eyes unfocused. The crowd gasped. Some took out phones. Others wiped tears. Sarah didn't care about the cameras. She only cared about the little body cradled in the firefighter's arms. Liam ran beside them. "He's going to be okay, right?" The medic hesitated. "We don't know yet, but we'll try everything." "I want to go with him," Liam said quickly. Sarah put her hand on his shoulder. "We'll follow them to the hospital, baby. We'll—" "Stay with him," the officer waved them through, even offered to lead them with his car. They arrived at the emergency vet within minutes. The building was small, quiet, but lit up like it knew something big was coming. Inside, the staff worked. Fast. IV lines, warm blankets, injections. They rushed Rusty behind double doors. Sarah sat in the waiting room, her hands clasped tightly. Liam leaned against her, eyes red and swollen. "He looked really bad," Liam said softly. "He's a fighter," Sarah replied. "He stayed alive under cement. That means something." Time slowed. An hour passed. Then 2. A vet finally walked out, his expression heavy. Sarah stood immediately. "Is he—" "He's alive," the vet said. "Barely. He was severely dehydrated, starved, and has several infections. One of his legs is broken. But he's stable." Liam jumped to his feet. "Can I see him?" The vet smiled. "You can, for a minute. But he won't be awake. He's got a long way to go." They followed him to a small recovery room. Rusty lay curled under a soft blanket, one paw sticking out, bandaged. A small oxygen mask rested over his snout. His eyes didn't open. Liam walked up to the side of the bed and whispered, "Hi, Rusty. We found you, just like I promised." Pup didn't move, but his tail gave a single, slow wag. Sarah covered her mouth, tears falling. "That's the first time he moved since we brought him in," the vet said. Liam looked up. "See? He knows we're here." Later that night, back at home, the news had already hit social media. A toddler hears barking under a sidewalk. A puppy trapped underground. A rescue no one saw coming. People were crying online, donating, sharing. But for Liam, it was never about going viral. He sat on the couch holding the blanket they used to carry Rusty out. "Will he come live with us?" he asked. Sarah sat beside him and kissed his head. "If he gets better, and if no one comes to claim him, then yeah, he's already part of our family." Liam smiled. "I'll wait." He looked out the window into the night where the sidewalk lay quiet once again. But this time, something had changed. Beneath the concrete, there was no more pain, because above it, there was hope. The morning after the rescue felt strange. The sun rose like it always did, but everything felt quieter, slower, like the world was still catching its breath. Sarah sat by the phone, checking for updates every few minutes. Liam was already dressed, backpack on, but he didn't care about school. All he wanted was to go back to the clinic. "I have to see Rusty," he said for the 3rd time. "He might need me." Sarah crouched down. "Sweetheart, the vet said they're still working on him. He needs rest." "But he heard me," Liam whispered. "When I said I found him, his tail moved." She looked into his eyes and sighed. "Okay, just for a few minutes." The vet clinic smelled like disinfectant and quiet sadness, the kind of place where animals fight their last battles. But today, the air felt different. The receptionist smiled when she saw them. "You're Liam, right?" she said. "Everyone's been talking about you." He didn't smile back. "Is Rusty awake?" "Not yet, but you can go see him." They walked into the recovery room. Rusty lay in the same corner, surrounded by tubes and quiet beeping machines. His fur looked a little cleaner now, but he was still skin and bones. His ribs showed like someone had drawn them with a marker. Sarah's throat tightened. "He's just a baby." A vet appeared beside them. Dr. Bennett, tall and soft-spoken. "We estimate he's about 4 months old," he said. "He was likely down there for 6 or 7 days. Maybe more." Sarah turned. "How did he survive?" Dr. Bennett shrugged slightly. "Sheer will, I guess. He's severely dehydrated. His muscles are wasting. He has ulcers in his mouth and an infection in his leg, but somehow he kept breathing." Liam stepped forward and gently pressed his hand against the glass. "I told him I was coming. Maybe he waited because he knew." Dr. Bennett watched Liam for a long second. "You know, that tail thump yesterday? We don't see that often in cases this bad. That kind of connection, it's rare." Liam smiled faintly. "He knows me," Sarah whispered. "He saved her heart before he even got to her arms." The next few days passed like slow motion. Sarah stayed up researching dog care. Liam drew pictures of Rusty every night and taped them to the wall beside his bed. At the clinic, Rusty made tiny signs of progress. His breathing got stronger. He lifted his head once, and on the 4th day, he opened both eyes. Dr. Bennett called them immediately. "He's awake," he said. "Not moving much, but he's awake." They rushed over. Rusty lay there, blinking at the ceiling, his head resting on a soft cloth. His eyes moved slowly toward the door as it opened. When Liam stepped in, Rusty's tail moved, just a slight wag, no more than a twitch, but it was real. Liam smiled, walking slowly toward him. "You remember me?" He knelt beside the kennel and whispered, "I found you." Rusty made a sound, soft, low, a sort of whimper, but not from pain. It was recognition. Sarah bit her lip and looked away, blinking fast. Dr. Bennett nodded. "He's not out of danger yet, but that right there, that's fight." They stayed for 10 minutes, then 20. Rusty's tail wagged again when Liam left the room. Dr. Bennett watched carefully. "He responds strongest when Liam's near," he said. "I think he's his anchor, that night." Sarah tucked Liam into bed. "Can he come home soon?" Liam asked. "We'll have to wait and see," she said, brushing his hair. "But when he does, he'll need a lot of care. I'll help. I'll feed him. I'll walk. Him, even if he can't walk back yet." Sarah smiled. "You've already given him something better than food." "What?" "Hope." The next morning, Liam drew another picture. This time, it showed Rusty standing up, strong, happy, his tail wagging like crazy. At the top, he wrote, "One day soon." At the clinic, Rusty tried to stand. He failed, collapsed, but his eyes didn't close. He tried again, and again. Each day, he moved just a little more. He licked water from a syringe. He blinked longer. He shifted his body, trying to sit. One afternoon, Dr. Bennett walked into the room and found Rusty pushing his head forward, trying to reach a stuffed toy Liam had left behind. He didn't make it far, but he tried. Dr. Bennett stood silent for a moment, watching. Then he whispered to the tech beside him, "He wants to live." A week after the rescue, Rusty wagged his tail when he heard Liam's voice, before the door even opened. Liam walked in, carrying a small red collar. "This is for later," he told him. "When you're ready." Rusty looked at it, then slowly, painfully, lifted his paw and pressed it against the glass. Sarah saw it happen. She gasped, and Liam whispered, "I'm ready when you are." The fight wasn't over. Rusty still had to heal, still had infections to beat, bones to mend. But in that moment, something was clear. Rusty wasn't just buried under concrete. He had been buried in silence, fear, and pain. But now, with every soft breath, every twitch of his tail, he was saying, "I'm still here, I'm still breathing, and I'm not done yet." The clinic was quiet at night. No barking, no phones, just the slow hum of machines and the gentle beeping of heart monitors. Sarah sat curled in the corner of Rusty's recovery room, wrapped in a hospital blanket. Liam was asleep beside her, using her leg as a pillow. The boy hadn't left Rusty's side in 2 days, not once. Rusty lay motionless in the kennel, his thin body still wrapped in bandages. The oxygen mask stayed strapped around his snout. Tubes ran along his leg. His ribs rose and fell slowly, like each breath was a mountain to climb. Sarah's eyes fought to stay open. Her phone said 2:52 a.m. Then, the beeping changed. At first, it was subtle, a faster pulse, a higher pitch. Then came the flat, stuttering noise. Sarah snapped fully awake. Her heart dropped. Rusty's monitor was flashing red. A tech ran into the room. "Get Dr. Bennett, now!" she shouted to someone behind her. Sarah grabbed Liam and stood up. "What's happening?" The tech didn't answer. She leaned over Rusty, adjusting his IV, tapping the monitor, trying to steady the panic. Rusty's chest wasn't moving. The beeping stretched out, longer, slower, until it stopped. "No!" Sarah cried, pulling Liam close. He was fine. He was getting better. Another vet rushed in with paddles. A nurse shouted out vitals. Another tech was on the phone. Dr. Bennett pushed through the door a second later, already pulling on gloves. "What happened?" he asked quickly. BP dropped fast. Pulse erratic. "He's crashing," said the nurse. Liam's voice trembled. "Is he dying?" Sarah didn't answer. Her hands covered her mouth, tears sliding down her face. The room turned into chaos. Chest compressions. Oxygen increased. Code blue. Rusty's body jolted slightly under the paddles. Still nothing. Dr. Bennett called. "Out again!" They shocked him again. Then again. Still flatline. Sarah turned away, holding Liam as he sobbed. "Please no," she whispered. "He's fought too hard." Liam broke free from her arms and ran to the kennel. The nurse moved to block him, but Dr. Bennett shouted, "Let him!" Liam reached through the kennel bars and touched Rusty's paw. "Please don't go," he whispered. His hand was shaking. "I found you. Remember, you waited for me under the ground. You can't leave now." "I'm here, Rusty. I'm still here." The whole room froze. And then, beep, faint, beep, beep. Rusty's chest rose, barely, but it did. The monitor beeped again, steady, slow, weak, but real. Dr. Bennett's jaw dropped. Is that spontaneous rhythm?" The nurse leaned in, staring at the screen. "I think it is." Rusty's leg twitched. Sarah gasped. Liam didn't move. He was still holding Rusty's paw, crying quietly. "I told you I'd stay," he whispered. Dr. Bennett shook his head slowly. That doesn't happen. Not like that." The nurse muttered. "Maybe he heard him." Rusty's eyes fluttered, open, just for a second, and met Liam's, then closed again. But it was enough. Enough to say, "I'm not leaving." They worked on stabilizing him, resetting fluids, rechecking oxygen. One by one, the machine steadied. Sarah sank to the floor, pulling Liam into her arms. "You saved him again," she whispered. "No," Liam said softly. "He just needed to know someone was still listening." Dr. Bennett walked over. Whatever that was, it brought him back. That connection. It's not something I can explain, but it's real. Sarah nodded through tears. He waited under concrete for a child's voice. Of course he came back for it again. The rest of the night was quiet. No more chaos, no alarms. Just the slow, soft hum of hope. At sunrise, Sarah watched Liam asleep beside Rusty's bed again. Rusty's paw was resting near the edge of the blanket, still wrapped, still fragile, but this time not limp. There was tension in his muscles, just enough to hold on. And in that silence, one thought echoed louder than anything else. Rusty had chosen to fight, because someone had chosen to fight for him. Rusty was healing, slowly, steadily. His tail wagged a little more every time. Liam walked in. He could now lift his head without help. Once, he even tried to bark, though it came out more like a cough. Still, he was alive and fighting. But as the days passed and the fear began to fade, something darker started to grow in Sarah's chest. How did he get there? Dogs don't just fall beneath sidewalks. They don't end up buried in cement by accident. The cracked concrete, the sealed space, the silence, none of it made sense. And no one was asking the hard questions. Not the clinic, not the city. So, Sarah did. She started where it all began, on their block, at the very sidewalk that nearly became a grave. She stood over the crack, looking down at the gap they had widened. The city had patched it up quickly after Rusty was rescued, like they were trying to erase the whole thing. But she remembered. Every sound, every tremble in Liam's voice, every piece of broken pavement she had chipped away with her hands. A week ago, she might have let it go, but now she'd seen too much. She knew someone had done this. She walked to the house 2 doors down, Mr. Henley's place. He worked for the city and always seemed to know everything going on around the neighborhood. She knocked. He answered with a cup of coffee and a tired face. "Sarah, didn't expect you." "I just have a quick question," she said. "Wasn't there some roadwork here a few weeks back?" Mr. Henley nodded. "Yeah. Water line burst down near the drain. They had to dig under the sidewalk a bit." Her stomach turned. "Do you remember which company was doing the work?" He shrugged. "It was a subcontractor, not the city itself. Delmore something, I think." Sarah blinked. "Delmore Contractors?" "Yeah, that's it. Big guys. Fast crew. Got the job done quick too." He took a sip. "Why?" Sarah forced a tight smile. "Just wondering." She walked back home slowly, thoughts spinning. That name, Delmore, stuck in her head like a thorn. That night, after Liam fell asleep with Rusty's drawing taped above his bed, Sarah opened her laptop and started searching. Delmore Contractors. Their website looked professional, their slogan, fast, clean, trusted. But there was no mention of her street, no photos, no record of the project. She went deeper. City records, inspection logs, permit filings. Nothing. No permit issued for sidewalk excavation near their address in the last 6 months. She called the Public Works office the next morning. The woman, on the other end, sounded confused. "There's no permit showing for Delmore on that street," she said. "Are you sure?" Sarah's voice hardened. "My son found a puppy buried alive under that sidewalk. Someone poured concrete over a living. Dog," a pause. "Ma'am, we'll have to escalate this." Sarah hung up and stared at her phone. Her hands were shaking. She went back to the sidewalk, knelt down, ran her fingers along the patch the city had poured over the hole, and whispered, "Someone put you down. There, didn't they? Rusty didn't fall. He wasn't lost. He was left, buried, erased, and someone thought no one would ever know." Later that day, Sarah visited the local construction office, claiming to be a concerned homeowner wanting documentation. "On recent repairs. Just want to know who was working on our block. For insurance reasons," she explained. The clerk, an older man with thick glasses, pulled up a file. Says here the original crew was pulled off the job mid-week. Delmore was brought in to finish it up. Why? Says here there were delays, safety concerns. No notes beyond that, she pressed. Anything unusual in the report? He frowned. Actually, this is strange. Half the final checklist is blank. No exit inspection. Just a stamp and a signature. Sarah took a picture with her phone. Thank you. When she got home, she stared at the photo. The signature was barely legible, but the name D. Harmon was typed beneath it. She searched again. Daniel Harmon, site supervisor, Delmore Contractors. That night. She sat with Liam as he fed Rusty tiny bites of boiled chicken at the vet clinic. Rusty's tail thumped every few seconds. His eyes followed Liam's hand, like it was the most important thing in the world. "Mommy," Liam said suddenly, "why would someone put him under the sidewalk?" Sarah hesitated, then knelt beside him. "Sometimes people don't think animals matter," she said. "Sometimes they just want to finish their job fast, and they don't want to deal with a little life crying in the way." Liam frowned, his hand pausing midair. "But Rusty's not little," he whispered. "He's brave." Sarah nodded, her voice thick. "He's the bravest I've ever seen." The next day, she filed a formal complaint against Delmore Contractors with the city. In her report, she attached everything: photos, timestamps, the blank checklist, even Liam's first-hand account. She ended it with one sentence: "Someone buried a puppy alive. I'm not going to bury the truth with him." And with that, the silence that had once kept Rusty underground was broken. Now, the truth was starting to rise. The day Rusty came home, the whole house changed. Sarah laid a soft dog bed in the corner of the living room, but Rusty didn't use it much. He preferred being wherever Liam was. If Liam sat on the floor to colour, Rusty limped over and collapsed beside him. If Liam played in the hallway, Rusty followed, dragging a torn fleece blanket Sarah had given him from the vet. Rusty still couldn't bark. Not really. Every time he tried, it came out like a soft puff of breath, followed by a whine. But his eyes spoke volumes, and his tail, when it wagged, could light up a whole room. At first, Sarah was nervous. The vet had warned them that Rusty might be slow to adjust, that he might be afraid, that trauma could linger. But Rusty wasn't afraid of Liam. He trusted Liam like he had known him forever. They were bonded now, boy and dog, both shaped by a moment no one else could ever fully understand. One afternoon, Sarah found Liam sitting on the kitchen floor, a plastic bowl of water between his legs. Rusty was licking slowly from it while Liam watched quietly. "He doesn't like the metal bowl," Liam said without looking up. "It makes loud noises. I think it scares him." Sarah nodded. "Good thinking, buddy." Liam patted Rusty's head gently. "He's getting better." Rusty's ears twitched. Later that evening, Sarah watched through the living room window as Liam sat in the yard, surrounded by toys. Not one of them was in his hands. Instead, he was showing them to Rusty, holding them up one by one. "This one's my fire truck," Liam said. "And this one is a space rocket. You can chew this one if you want. It's already broken." Rusty just blinked, resting his chin on Liam's leg. Sarah opened the door. "Dinner in 10, guys." Rusty tried to stand, but winced. "Easy," Liam whispered, sliding his arm under Rusty's belly to help him up. "He's my brother now," Liam said suddenly. Sarah tilted her head. "What?" "He came from underground to be with me," Liam explained matter-of-factly. "That means we're family." Sarah's chest tightened. "Yeah, I guess that does." That night, Rusty refused to sleep in the dog bed again. Instead, he curled up next to Liam's bed. When Liam rolled over and dangled his arm off the side, Rusty reached up with his paw and rested it there. Sarah peeked in and saw it. She didn't say anything, just turned off the hallway light and whispered, "Good night, boys." The next morning, Rusty tried something new. He stood without wobbling. It lasted all of 3 seconds before he sat back down, panting hard. But Liam clapped and shouted, "You did it!" Rusty's tail thumped weakly. Sarah smiled from the doorway. Baby steps. Rusty wasn't perfect. He still flinched at loud noises. He still cried softly when Liam left the room. He still had to be carried down the porch steps. But he was here. He was home. One afternoon, Liam drew a new picture and handed it to Sarah. It was a stick figure version of himself and Rusty. Liam had a red cape. Rusty had a little crown. "We're superheroes," he said. "Because we saved each other." Sarah bent down, kissing his forehead. "You're right." She looked at Rusty, curled up at Liam's feet, and realized something else. Maybe Rusty had come from a dark, broken place. But now he was in a home full of light. And in Liam's eyes, that was all that mattered. Sarah sat at the kitchen table long after Liam had gone to bed. The glow of her laptop screen lit the worry on her face. Rusty was curled on the floor nearby, his breathing calm and steady now. Every so often, his paw twitched in his sleep, as if he were still dreaming of being trapped. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She was a witness, a voice, and she knew what she had to do. The next morning, after walking Liam to preschool and making sure Rusty was resting comfortably, Sarah made the call. "Hi," she said softly. "My name is Sarah Bennett. You don't know me, but I have a story about a dog who was buried alive under a sidewalk, and I believe someone covered it up." The voice on the other end belonged to a woman named Nora Lee, a young local journalist, known for digging deep. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. 2 hours later, they sat across from each other at Sarah's kitchen table. Sarah laid everything out: photos, audio recordings, notes, even the blurry image of the signed but incomplete inspection form with the name D. Harmon from Delmore Contractors. Rusty lay nearby, his head resting on a folded blanket, his eyes blinking slowly as he watched the two women speak. "You're saying there's no official record of this job being inspected?" Nora asked, flipping through the folder. "No permit in city records, no inspection report filed. And yet, new concrete was poured over that sidewalk just 3 weeks ago," Sarah replied. Nora's fingers slowed. She leaned forward. "You said your son heard barking from under the sidewalk before anyone even knew there was a dog?" "Yes," Sarah said. "He never gave up. He knew someone was down there." Nora looked up. "And when you broke the concrete open, we found him," Sarah finished, glancing at Rusty. Nora was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Sarah, this wasn't just a mistake. If what you're telling me is true, someone knowingly poured concrete over a living animal." Sarah nodded. "They didn't just bury a mistake. They buried the evidence." Nora took a deep breath. "That's not just neglect. That's cruelty. And the city is covering it," Sarah whispered. "I filed a report. No one called back. They patched the hole the next day like nothing happened." Rusty lifted his head slightly at her voice. Nora stared at the folder again. "This story, it's not just about a puppy anymore." Sarah leaned in. "It never was." That night, Nora wrote for hours. She reached out to her contacts, pulled city filings, cross-checked project dates. The more she looked, the worse. It got Delmore Contractors had a history. Small complaints here and there, rushed work, undocumented jobs, safety corners cut. Nothing major. Nothing that ever stuck. Until now. By morning, she had enough for a draft. She called Sarah. "I'm publishing it," she said. "Today." Sarah's voice trembled. "Are you sure?" "They need to know what they did." The article hit the local news site at 10:06 a.m., buried alive, the toddler, the puppy, and the silence beneath our streets. It went viral within hours. People cried reading it. Photos of Liam kneeling by the sidewalk, of Rusty's bloodied paw reaching through the rubble, of Sarah, hammer in hand, tears streaking her dirt-covered face. Donations poured in. Calls came from all over the state, but so did the pressure. At 4 p.m., Sarah got a call from a blocked number. A calm, firm voice said, "You've made a lot of noise. Who is this?" "Someone who thinks you're stirring up things that should stay buried." Sarah's spine chilled. She hung up. Later, a black SUV rolled slowly past her house. No plates. The city issued a brief statement. "We are investigating the claims." No further comment, but the truth had already slipped out, and it couldn't be covered back up with more cement. Rusty became a symbol. Protesters held signs. "Justice for Rusty." Online posts flooded with "buried, but breathing." News vans camped on the corner of the street where it all began. Inside the house, Liam didn't fully understand the chaos. He just held Rusty close and whispered bedtime stories into his ear. "You're a hero now," he said softly. But you were always a hero to me. Rusty licked his hand, eyes full of the only thing that mattered. Trust. Sarah knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Because someone had made the decision to bury Rusty alive, and now the world wanted to know. The story wouldn't go away. It was on every screen, in every paper. The toddler, the trapped dog, the mysterious sidewalk, and the name Delmore Contractors. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted to know how a puppy ended up buried under fresh concrete, and who let it happen. Then, 3 days after the story went public, Sarah received an email. No subject line, no name, just a single sentence. I was there. I'll talk. Attached was a phone number. Sarah stared at the screen, her hand frozen on the mouse. Part of her wanted to ignore it. What if it was fake? What if it was another threat? But something told her, this was real. She called Nora. Come, over. Right now, she said. Someone's ready to talk. An hour later, they were sitting in Sarah's living room. Liam was playing in the next room, whispering softly to Rusty, who was curled up in a blanket, still too weak to walk far. Sarah had the phone on speaker, her hand trembling as she hit call. A gruff voice answered on the second ring. You the lady with the dog? Sarah swallowed. Yes. I'm not giving my name, but I work that site. The sidewalk. I was there. Nora leaned forward. Why are you coming forward now? Because I can't sleep, the man said. I see that dog's face every night. I didn't know he was still alive. I thought he was gone when we poured the slab. Sarah closed her eyes. We heard barking, he continued. At first we thought it was coming from the drain, but then it got louder, more desperate. Did anyone check? Nora asked. No. We were behind schedule. The site boss, Harmon, told us to move fast. He said it was probably just a stray caught somewhere and to keep going. Did you see the dog? Sarah asked, voice shaking. No. But we heard him. I heard him. We all did. And you kept pouring? She asked, her voice rising. He threatened to fire us if we stopped. Said it wasn't our problem. Said, it's just a dog. Finish the job. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. She stood up and walked to the window, breathing hard. Liam peeked from around the corner. Mommy, she turned, trying to calm herself. It's okay, baby. Go stay with Rusty. The man on the phone continued. I wanted to go back, after the job was done. I even came back late at night to check the hole. But it was sealed, silent. He paused. I thought we'd buried him alive. And now I know we did. Nora's voice was cold. Are you willing to go on record? No, I've got kids. I lose my job. I lose my house. I understand, she said. But you need to know. This is a crime. A real one. Yeah, he said. I know. The line went dead. Nora and Sarah sat in silence. Finally, Sarah spoke. They knew. Nora nodded. They heard him, and they poured it anyway. Liam stepped into the room. Rusty limped behind him, dragging his blanket. Who were you talking to? Liam asked. A man, Sarah said. One of the people who buried Rusty. Liam looked confused. Why would someone do that? Sarah knelt beside him. Because sometimes grown-ups forget to care about little lives. They think fast work is more important than kindness. Liam frowned. But Rusty's not little. No, she said, hugging him. He's not. Nora stood. We go public with this. The voice, the quote. It's enough. The world needs to hear it. Sarah nodded. Let's do it. By evening, the new headline read, Whistleblower, claims contractor, ignored dog's cries. Just a stray, boss said. The internet exploded. Comments poured in. Monsters. He heard him and did nothing. I hope they go to jail. And then, a call came from a local news station. We'd like to do an on-camera interview. With Liam. With the dog. Sarah hesitated. He's just a child. The woman on the line replied, he's the only one who truly listened. The next morning, the crew showed up. Lights, mics, cameras. Liam sat on the couch beside Rusty, who rested his head on Liam's lap. The reporter leaned forward, gentle. Liam, what did you do when you heard the dog under the sidewalk? Liam looked at the camera and answered simply, I sat there until someone believed me. And why did you stay? He hugged Rusty tighter, because he was scared, and no one should be alone when they're scared. Behind the camera, the room fell silent. Sarah wiped her eyes, and Nora whispered, That's going to break hearts. The interview aired that night. The footage of Liam hugging the broken pup under bright studio lights spread across the world, but the question still hung in the air. Who gave the order to bury a living soul? Because now, the world wanted names. And they were coming for them. The story was no longer just theirs. By morning, Liam and Rusty's names were trending everywhere. News anchors called it the Sidewalk Miracle. Influencers reposted the video clip of Liam whispering, No one should be alone when they're scared. It had over 5 million views in 24 hours. People cried. People donated. People were furious. The internet had chosen sides, and they chose Liam and Rusty. Sarah's inbox flooded, hundreds of messages, some from strangers offering to pay vet bills, others begging to meet the brave little boy who saved a life. One woman wrote, Your son reminded me of what humanity is supposed to look like. The donations were overwhelming, enough to cover Rusty's care 10 times over. Sarah opened a small savings account labeled Rusty's Hope. She had no idea what to do with all of it. She just wanted her son's life to be normal again. But normal wasn't coming back. One night, after putting Liam to bed, Sarah found an envelope taped to her front door. No name, just a typed note inside. Let it go, for your family's sake. She stood on the porch, staring at it, heart pounding. The next day, a black car idled outside her home for nearly an hour, windows tinted, engine humming. Then it drove off without a word. Sarah wasn't stupid. Delmore was watching. A lawyer called, later that afternoon. Calm voice, cold tone, we're representing Delmore contractors. Ms. Bennett, this media frenzy is damaging to our client. We strongly advise you to cease public statements. Further action may follow. Sarah laughed bitterly. Are you threatening me because I told the truth? We're urging you to be careful. She hung up. But the pressure didn't stop. City inspectors began randomly showing up to check her fence, her porch, even her trash bins. Liam's school received a call questioning his enrollment paperwork. It was petty, obvious, and all meant to scare her. At dinner, Liam pushed his peas around his plate. Rusty lay under the table, resting his head on Liam's sock-covered foot. Mommy? Liam asked. Why are people mad at us? Sarah paused, fork halfway to her mouth. Some people don't like being told they did something wrong, she said gently, especially when they get caught. But we didn't do anything wrong, he whispered. No, she said. We did something right, and sometimes that scares people more. Rusty gave a soft, hoarse whine as if agreeing. The next day, Nora called. I've got emails, leaked ones, internal memos from Delmore. They knew they poured without inspection. They even called it damage control in one thread. Sarah exhaled. So we have proof. Nora replied, yes, but that also means this is going to get uglier. They met that night in Sarah's backyard. Nora brought printouts, names, dates, emails confirming everything. The sidewalk pour had been rushed, unauthorized, and intentionally covered. Rusty limped across the grass, nudging his head against Nora's knee as she read the final line aloud. Ignore it. If it's a stray, it won't matter in 2 days. Sarah covered her mouth. They planned to let him die. They planned for him to disappear, Nora said. Liam came outside, rubbing his eyes. What's going on? Sarah reached for him. Nothing you need to worry about tonight. He looked at Nora, then Rusty, who curled up at his feet like, always. Are we still helping him? he asked. Sarah nodded. Always. And that's what gave her strength. Not the cameras, not the headlines, but the way her son looked at Rusty. Like saving one life was the greatest thing anyone could ever do. Sarah stood tall and looked Nora in the eye. "Let them threaten," she said. "I'm not backing down. They buried him alive, and now the world is watching." It happened on a Tuesday, the kind of day that felt normal again. Almost. The house was quiet, warm with the scent of toast and peanut butter. Liam sat on the living room floor, dipping crackers into his juice, half watching cartoons. Rusty lay on the blanket nearby, curled in his usual spot beside Liam's leg. Weeks had passed since the rescue. Rusty had gained weight. His coat had started to shine again, even if patches were still thin. He could walk short distances, limp a little less, sleep a little deeper. But he hadn't made a single sound since the night he nearly died. No barks, no howls, not even a playful growl. Just soft whines when Liam left the room, and quiet sighs in his sleep. The vets said his throat might have been damaged, or maybe the trauma had locked his voice away. Sarah had stopped asking. She was just grateful he was alive. But Liam never gave up. Every day he'd whisper, "It's okay if you don't bark. I still hear you." Then, out of nowhere, it happened. Liam dropped his cracker, reaching for the remote, when a tiny yip echoed in the room. He froze, so did Rusty. Then it came again, a soft, scratchy bark. Not loud, not clear, but real. Liam gasped and stood. "Mommy! Mommy!" Sarah rushed in from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. "What is it?" He barked. She blinked. "What?" Rusty barked. Sarah looked down at the dog, who was now standing, barely, tail wagging like it hadn't in weeks. Then came the third bark, a little stronger. Rusty looked up at Liam and let out another. His ears perked, and for the first time, his whole body looked alive. Liam dropped to his knees. "You're back," he whispered. "You really came back." Rusty walked toward him, unsteady but determined. He reached Liam and pushed his snout into the boy's chest. Sarah stood frozen in the doorway, eyes filling. "He hasn't made a sound in almost a month." Liam turned to her. "He was just waiting. He wanted to make sure we wouldn't leave." Rusty barked again, louder this time, then collapsed happily into Liam's lap. The sound wasn't perfect. His voice still shook. But in that moment, it was louder than the headlines, stronger than the silence that had haunted them since the beginning. It was a sound of returning, of healing, of finally stepping out of the dark. Later that evening, Sarah posted a simple video, Rusty letting out his tiny bark, tail wagging, Liam laughing with pure joy. The caption read, "The sound we waited weeks for." It exploded. Thousands of comments poured in. "I'm crying. He found his voice, again. This little hero got his bark back." People from across the world responded with their own stories of rescue, hope, and recovery. But for Liam, none of that mattered. He curled up beside Rusty that night, whispering, "I missed your voice." Rusty nudged his hand and gave one last sleepy bark before closing his eyes. It wasn't just noise, it was proof. He was still here, still fighting, and finally free. The courtroom was colder than Sarah expected. Not just in temperature, but in feeling. It was all marble, metal, and straight faces. Rusty wasn't allowed inside. He was back home with Nora, resting on the same blanket he'd had since that first night out of the clinic. But Liam was here. A little boy in a blue sweater, holding a toy truck in one hand and Sarah's fingers in the other. His feet didn't even touch the floor when he sat on the witness chair. His eyes scanned the big room like it was a giant classroom he hadn't asked to visit. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not really. But the lawyer, one of the good ones, fought hard for it. "Your Honor, this child found the dog, insisted something was wrong, and stayed at that sidewalk for days. He is the heart of this story. He is the truth. And now here. He was, under oath, legs swinging nervously. The judge looked old, kind, but tired. He tapped his fingers on the bench and said, "Proceed." The lawyer stepped forward, speaking gently. "Hi, Liam." "Hi," Liam whispered. "Do you remember the day you heard the sound under the sidewalk?" Liam nodded. "Yes." "What were you doing that day?" "I was playing with my truck. I dropped it, and when I picked it up, I heard it." "What did you hear, Liam?" The room held its breath. Liam looked down at his hands. His voice came out small but sure. A bark, like crying, silence. The words hung there like truth made solid. A man in the front row covered his mouth. Someone in the jury wiped tears. The lawyer stepped closer. "And what did you do after you heard it?" I told Mommy, but nobody believed me. "Did you go back the next day?" "Yes," Liam said, "every day." "And why did you keep going?" "Because the dog didn't leave," he said. He kept crying. Sarah sat in the front row, her hands clenched tight. The judge leaned back, slowly, eyes closed for a second, as if absorbing the weight of the moment. The opposing lawyer stood. "Your Honor, while we respect the child's account, we question the reliability. He is 3. The judge opened his eyes. "I think this court can decide for itself what matters." Liam looked confused. "Did I do something wrong?" "No." "Baby," Sarah said softly from her seat. "You're doing everything right." The lawyer returned to the stand. "Liam, when you heard the bark, what did it sound like?" He thought for a moment. "Like someone was really scared. Like they were stuck and nobody could hear them." More silence. No more questions. Liam was excused. Sarah hugged him as he came down. "I'm so proud of you." Back at their seats, the next witness took the stand. The whistleblower. He didn't look proud. He looked ashamed. He was older than Sarah imagined. Maybe late 50s. Hard hands. Tired eyes. He spoke softly. The same words from the phone call, now under oath. "We heard barking. We were told to keep pouring. The boss said, 'It's just a stray.' We didn't stop." "And who gave that order?" the prosecutor asked. "Daniel Harmon, site supervisor for Delmore Contractors." "Yes." The defense tried to downplay it, calling it hearsay, questioning memory. But the jury wasn't blind. They had heard the voice of truth already. It came from a 3-year-old boy in a blue sweater, and no one questioned his memory. By the end of the day, the court had what it needed: a broken permit trail, missing inspection logs, a recorded confession, a sidewalk, grave, and a little boy who sat beside that grave, refusing to walk away. The judge looked across the courtroom one last time before rising. This court will reconvene tomorrow for the final ruling. But let me say this. Sometimes justice isn't about who's the loudest. It's about who listens when no one else does. Sarah squeezed Liam's hand as they walked outside into the press, the cameras, the flashing lights. Liam held her hand tighter and whispered, "Did I help?" Sarah knelt down, cupped his face and said, "You are the help. You're the reason he's alive." Behind them, the courthouse stood tall. But for Liam, the real trial had already ended because he had spoken the truth, and the world finally heard it. Courtrooms weren't made for dogs, but exceptions are sometimes made for witnesses who can't speak, yet carry the loudest truth. The next day, Rusty entered the courtroom. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just limped through the doorway, guided gently by Dr. Bennett, his vet, and followed closely by Sarah and Liam. The room fell into a hush. No shuffling papers, no whispers, not even the usual clinks from the clerk's desk. Just silence. Everyone watched as the once buried, now famous German shepherd stepped into the place where justice was supposed to live. He wore no muzzle, no vest, just a soft blue bandage on his front leg and a faded tag that read Rusty. He made his way straight to Liam, who sat with his feet barely brushing the floor. Rusty sniffed once, then rested his head in the boy's lap. Liam smiled and ran his fingers through Rusty's fur. The jury didn't blink. It wasn't a stunt. It wasn't showmanship. It was evidence. The kind that breathes. The kind that limps on a damaged leg. The kind that knows love after suffering silence. The vet took the stand. State your name and credentials for the record. Dr. Stephen Bennett, licensed veterinarian. I've worked in emergency animal care for 19 years. And you've been treating the dog in question? Yes, since the day he was rescued. Can you describe his condition when he arrived? Dr. Bennett nodded slowly. He was emaciated, severely dehydrated. He had multiple abrasions, a fractured leg, signs of infection, and clear evidence of prolonged confinement. Prolonged. Confinement, the prosecutor asked, meaning he was stuck in a space where he couldn't move much, likely underground. Based on his wounds, he had been trying to dig or claw his way out. Unsuccessfully, murmurs stirred through the courtroom. The prosecutor continued. Was there any indication these injuries could have occurred naturally, without human involvement? No, Dr. Bennett said plainly. Rusty was not simply lost or abandoned. He was trapped. Intentionally or through negligence, he was left in a place no living thing could escape. The defense stood. Doctor, with respect, you can't say who trapped the dog, correct? No, the vet replied. But I can say someone chose not to help him. That decision nearly killed him. The jury didn't look away from Rusty. He lay peacefully beside Liam, his head still on the boy's lap. Every few minutes, his tail thumped once, soft but sure. The judge finally spoke. Would the child like to remove the dog now or remain seated? Liam looked up, unsure. Sarah leaned close. Do you want to stay? Liam nodded. He's okay here. The court allowed it, and so, Rusty remained. The trial moved forward. Witnesses testified. Former employees described rushed jobs, ignored safety procedures, and pressure from above to meet deadlines. At any cost, it became clear. Delmore had cut corners, again and again. But the deeper truth, the human truth, sat curled beside a child, breathing softly, eyes half closed, content to simply exist in a place he never should have returned to. That was the moment people stopped seeing Rusty as just a dog. He was a survivor, a living, breathing witness to something broken. But justice moves slowly, and powerful people don't fall without clawing back. Delmore's lawyers called it a tragedy, not a crime. They blamed miscommunication, said the barking was probably from a distant pipe, and the injury possibly pre-existing. But no one in the room believed that, because everyone had seen the truth already. It wagged its tail. It limped across the courtroom. It laid its head on the lap of a boy who never stopped listening. When closing arguments came, the prosecutor didn't raise his voice. He simply gestured toward Liam and Rusty. Ladies and gentlemen, he said quietly, you don't need to imagine the pain of this case. You can see it. You can feel it. He paused. This isn't about a dog in a hole. This is about what happens when people choose silence over decency, when they choose a deadline over a life. He looked back at the defense table, and when they try to bury the truth, only to watch it crawl out, alive. Rusty barked once, quiet, sharp, real, and the courtroom cried. No ruling came that day. It would be weeks before the final verdict. But as Sarah walked out of the courtroom, Liam holding one hand and Rusty limping beside him, she knew something had already changed. They had told the truth, and Rusty had spoken in the only way he could. Not with words, but with presence, with survival, with the quiet, undeniable fact that he was still here, and the world was watching. It was late. The porch light flickered, casting a dim glow over the front lawn. The wind had picked up, rustling the bushes beside the driveway. Sarah had just tucked Liam into bed. Rusty lay curled at his feet, snoring gently. She was stepping outside to grab a package when she saw it. Her car tilted slightly, too low. At first, she thought it was a shadow, a trick of the night, but when she got closer, her chest tightened. All 4 tires were slashed. She dropped to her knees, heart pounding. Her hand touched the rubber, now torn like paper. And that's when she saw the envelope under the windshield wiper. It wasn't sealed, just folded, black ink on white paper. Drop the case or lose your family. Sarah stood there for a long time, staring at the words. Her hands were shaking, her stomach turning, but her feet didn't move. She knew this was coming. Delmore was cornered and desperate. She picked up the note, folded it carefully, and walked back into the house. Inside, everything looked the same. Liam's, drawings on the fridge, the soft hum of the dishwasher, Rusty's quiet breathing. But everything felt different. Threats were no longer subtle. They were real, tangible, razor sharp. She sat at the kitchen table, hands locked together, note lying flat in front of her. She didn't call the police. She didn't post it online. She just sat there and stared, because if they were trying to scare her, it was already too late for that. She had already been scared when Liam first said he heard barking, when the sidewalk cracked open, when Rusty flatlined, when Delmore's lawyers tried to bury them in paperwork the same way they buried that pup. No, fear wasn't new, but resolve that had grown stronger every single day. Hours passed. She didn't sleep. At sunrise, she woke Liam gently. "Is it today?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "It is," she whispered. He sat up. Rusty lifted his head too. Sarah poured cereal, but neither of them ate much. She dressed Liam slowly, brushing, his hair with quiet care. His tiny fingers reached for Rusty's leash. Sarah clipped it on. "Ready?" she asked. Liam nodded. "We're all going." They stepped outside. Neighbors watched from their windows. The news van already sat across the street. One reporter offered a nod. She nodded back. The slashed tires had already been towed. Sarah didn't say a word about them. Rusty walked slower these days, but he walked. Each step was a reminder, a declaration. He was supposed to be dead, but he wasn't. They reached the courthouse steps just before 9 a.m. The air was crisp, cameras flashed, voices murmured. Sarah held Liam's hand in one, Rusty's leash in the other. A reporter leaned in and asked, "Sarah, do you feel safe?" She looked right at the camera. "Let them come," she said. "I'm not scared anymore." Inside, the courtroom was full. Nora was already there, folders stacked in front of her. The whistleblower sat 2 rows behind, head low but present. The prosecutor gave a quiet nod as Sarah took her seat. Rusty settled at Liam's feet. Everyone waited. The judge entered. All rose, and Sarah exhaled for the first time in hours. It was time. The courtroom may have been cold, the system slow, and the power of Delmore intimidating, but none of it could erase what happened. None of it could undo what Liam heard that day, or what Rusty suffered beneath 6 inches of concrete. And now, there would be no more silence. Not today. Because today, truth was standing tall, with scraped paws, with bandaged legs, with the quiet courage of a little boy who never stopped listening, and a mother who refused to stop fighting. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Every seat was filled. The hallway was lined with people peeking through the door. Reporters, activists, parents, kids, animal lovers, neighbors, lawyers, all of them waiting, not for drama, but for justice. Sarah sat straight in the front row, her arm wrapped around Liam. Rusty lay between them, his head resting on Liam's shoe, eyes half closed, but awake. Every now and then, his tail gave a single soft thump against the courtroom floor. They had been waiting for this moment for weeks, but in a way, the wait had lasted much longer. Since the very first bark from beneath the sidewalk, since the first crack broke open in their lives. The bailiff stepped forward. "All rise." The judge entered, old, measured, worn, but sharp-eyed. He didn't speak right away. He looked over the room, scanning the faces. some nervous, some defiant, some exhausted. Then he placed a single page in front of him. "This court," he began, "has seen evidence of a tragic failure." His voice, carried without shouting, every word landed like a hammer. But this is not just about failure. This is about choice. A silence fell like snow. The choice to ignore a sound. The choice to prioritize speed and money over life. The choice to silence a living creature, to bury him beneath a sidewalk, and then walk away. The defense. Lawyer stood, already bracing. The judge raised a hand. "I've read the internal emails. I've heard the testimony. I've seen the paw prints on the inside of the concrete." Liam held his breath. Sarah gripped his hand tightly. The judge continued. "This was not an accident. This was cruelty, deliberate, and dismissive." People in the gallery gasped quietly. "Therefore," the judge said, "Delmore contractors will be fined the maximum amount permitted under the law. Their operating license is hereby revoked, and I am formally recommending that the district attorney pursue criminal charges against all responsible parties, beginning with Mr. Daniel Harmon." A burst of energy moved through the courtroom like a current. Some people clapped. Others covered their mouths in shock. The defense sat frozen. Liam turned to Sarah. "What does it mean?" She bent down and whispered, "It means they can't hurt anyone else now." The judge wasn't done. "But justice," he said, "is not just about punishment. It is also about remembrance." He looked at Liam. "Today, the city recognizes the actions of a child who listened when no one else did." Liam's eyes widened. The judge smiled faintly. "Your courage saved a life, and it reminded this city, this court, of something we must never forget. That lives don't have to speak our language to matter." Sarah wiped her cheeks. Liam looked down at Rusty. The dog slowly stood, limped forward, and rested his front paws on Liam's lap. The judge nodded toward them. "This courtroom is often a place of rules, papers, and arguments. But today, it was a place of truth. And the truth barked, quiet, broken, and one boy heard it." The crowd stood and clapped. This time, no one stopped them. Flashes from cameras filled the room as reporters scrambled to record the moment. Microphones buzzed. The entire city would know within minutes. Rusty barked once, just once, but it echoed, and then he licked Liam's cheek. The little boy laughed, a soft giggle that broke every heart in the room. In that moment, he wasn't a hero or a witness, or a symbol. He was just a child, and Rusty was his dog. When they stepped outside, the courthouse steps were packed. People cheered. Signs waved in the air. "Justice for Rusty. Heroes come small." Liam listened. Someone handed Sarah a microphone. She looked down at Liam, who nodded. She took a breath. "We didn't plan any of this," she said. "We didn't ask for it. My son heard something, and he didn't stop listening. That's all." She looked down at Rusty. "And because of that, something buried came back to life." She looked back at the crowd. "Maybe we all just need to start listening better." Rusty barked again. The crowd laughed, cried, clapped. That night, at home, Sarah tucked Liam in. "Was that the end?" he asked, voice sleepy. She looked at Rusty, already curled on the rug at the foot of the bed. "No, baby," she said. "It's just the beginning." The papers were signed in under 10 minutes. But to Sarah, it felt like something sacred. The woman behind the desk smiled kindly as she stamped the final document. "Congratulations," she said. "He's officially yours." Sarah looked down at Rusty, sitting patiently at her feet, his leash looped loosely in her hand. "He always was," she whispered. Rusty tilted his head, ears twitching. Maybe he didn't know what the word adopted meant, but he understood the tone, the warmth, the promise. Liam ran in from the hallway, holding a red collar they'd picked out together last week. On it was a shiny silver tag with just one word: Rusty. Liam crouched down and clipped it gently around his neck. "Now you're really home," he said. Rusty licked his cheek, and that was that. No fanfare, no cameras. Just a boy, a dog, and a family that had been building itself out of broken pieces. Back at home, life didn't feel like headlines anymore. The news crews stopped showing up. The protests ended. The court case faded from the front page, but the sidewalk on their street had a new plaque embedded in the concrete. For Rusty, who was heard. Liam read it every time they passed. In the afternoons, he and Rusty played in the yard. Liam would roll toy cars down the slope of the grass, while Rusty limped after them, tail wagging. Sometimes they just laid there, side by side, watching the clouds. Rusty never barked much. He didn't need to. But every once in a while, especially when the sky turned orange and the wind got still, he'd let out a quiet sound. A soft huff through his nose, followed by a long exhale. Sarah called it a rusty sigh. It happened most often at night. After Liam was asleep and the house had gone quiet, Sarah would check the bedroom and find the same thing. Rusty curled beside the bed, his body pressed close to the nightstand, one paw stretched toward the blanket. And, just as she turned off the hall light, she'd hear it. That small, content sigh, like his whole body was saying, "I'm safe now." One night, Sarah sat on the edge of Liam's bed, brushing hair from his forehead. "Does Rusty still remember?" she asked softly. Liam opened his eyes, barely awake. Remember what? What it was like, under the sidewalk. Liam reached down and rested his hand on Rusty's back. The dog stirred, then settled again. "I think he does," Liam said, "but he's not scared of it anymore." Sarah smiled. Neither was she. They had built something stronger than fear. A home, one that started with barking and grew into something no one could ever bury again. The stage wasn't big, just a few wooden steps and a strip of red ribbon strung across two poles. But for Sarah, it felt like a monument. A year ago, she and Liam had stood beside a cracked sidewalk, listening to something no one else could hear. Today, they stood in front of something solid, bright, and full of hope. Rusty's Haven. The letters were carved into a polished sign just above the entrance. A clean, peaceful building now stood where an empty lot used to be, funded entirely by donations from people who had followed the story, people who believed in second chances, in survival, in the quiet strength of a dog who refused to die. Liam stood in front of the crowd, a big pair of scissors in his small hands. He wore a white shirt and blue jeans, his hair neatly combed, but still a little messy. Rusty sat beside him, taller now, healthier, his coat shiny and full. His limp was still there, but softer, like a shadow of a storm long gone. The crowd was silent. Phones were up, ready to record. Liam turned to Sarah. "Do I have to talk?" "You don't have to," she whispered, "but I think you already know what to say." Liam took a deep breath and stepped forward to the small microphone. His voice came out shy at first. "My name's Liam, and this is my dog, Rusty." Rusty wagged his tail. The crowd smiled. "A year ago," Liam said slowly, "he was under a sidewalk. Nobody believed he was there. But I heard him." He looked down at Rusty. He didn't bark a lot back then, but I heard him anyway. Liam turned back to the crowd. "Dogs don't belong under sidewalks. They belong with us." Then he paused. The crowd waited. Rusty stood, walked to the edge of the stage, and looked out at the people. His eyes scanned the rows of faces, and then, without warning, he lifted his head and barked, loud, strong, whole. The crowd gasped. Some clapped, some covered their mouths, and some just cried. Sarah wiped her eyes, smiling through tears. The sound was full of everything he couldn't say a year ago. It was loud enough to echo across the parking lot, across the town, across every story that had ever ended too early for a dog that wasn't heard in time. Liam turned and clipped the red ribbon with a satisfying snap. The crowd cheered. Rusty's haven was officially open. Inside, the shelter was clean and warm. Sunlight streamed through big windows and soft music played from the speakers. Each dog had a real bed, toys, blankets, and, most importantly, visits from people who cared. Volunteers wore shirts with paw prints and the words, "Every bark matters." In the lobby hung a framed photo, Liam holding Rusty on the day he was adopted. Below it, a plaque read, "For every dog left behind, may they all be heard." That afternoon, Rusty wandered the halls beside Liam, greeting other dogs through their kennel doors, tail wagging gently. Some barked, some didn't, but Rusty paused at each one, sniffed, listened, and moved on, like he understood what it meant to wait in silence. Reporters asked Liam what he wanted to be when he grew up. He answered simply, "Someone who keeps listening." That night, as the last of the visitors left and the shelter lights dimmed, Sarah tucked Liam into bed with Rusty curled at his feet. "Did I do okay?" Liam asked. "You did perfect," Sarah said. Rusty let out a deep sigh, the same sound he made the first night they brought him home. The house was quiet, safe, whole. And in the stillness, Sarah smiled, knowing that somewhere out there a dog was barking, and this time someone was listening.